Feel the bass in your chest, the loss of self and the energy of thousands of bodies moving as one. Is it just a concert, or is it something older, more primitive? There is a force in music capable of turning an audience into a tribe and an artist, into a shaman. But what happens when this power is wielded without due care? What lies hidden in the psychology of rhythm that can lead to collective catharsis, but also to danger? Here at The Truth, Dark Psychology, we explore the invisible forces that shape human behavior. If you dare to question what's behind the curtain, subscribe and prepare to see the world differently. Today, we decode the influence and mass rituals of one of the most magnetic and controversial artists of our generation, Travis Scott's influence begins long before he takes the stage. It is woven into the very fabric of his music. His productions are more than songs. They are sonic environments carefully engineered to induce a state of trance. The heavy use of auto-tune is not to correct his voice, but to transform it into an ethereal instrument, a ghostly guide in the soundscape. Combined with hypnotic beats, deep bass, and repetitive ad-libs like it's lit. Or straight up, he creates a sonic mantra. This repetition is an age-old induction technique designed to overwhelm the conscious brain, lower inhibitions, and open the mind to a state of collective suggestion. He acts as a modern shaman, using technology to access primitive states of consciousness. The structure of his songs often abandons traditional verses and choruses in favor of abrupt beat switches and atmospheric passages, creating an unpredictable journey. This keeps the listener in a constant state of tension and release, an emotional roller coaster that mirrors ancient rituals where music was used to bring participants to a spiritual or cathartic climax. We are not just listening to music. We are being guided through a sonic ritual. This sonic architecture is fundamental to understanding the power he wields over crowds. By creating an environment that is simultaneously chaotic and controlled, he lays the groundwork for de-individuation. In this state, an individual's sense of personal identity diminishes, and they begin to identify with the group's energy. Personal responsibility dissolves into the collective experience, and actions are guided more by the group's instinct and emotion than by individual reason. It is fertile ground for mass influence. The mastery of this technique reveals a deep, intuitive understanding of the neuroscience of rhythm. The human brain is hardwired to synchronize with external beats, a phenomenon known as neural entrainment. Travis Scott exploits this to the fullest, using rhythms that mimic hypnotic patterns, causing thousands of brains to sync up in the same state of arousal. He isn't just making people dance. He is quite literally putting an entire crowd on the same psychological frequency, making them more receptive to his direction and energy. Therefore, the basis of his influence is not just charisma or image, but a sophisticated manipulation of sound. He is an architect of mental states, using the psychology of rhythm to dismantle the individual and rebuild them as part of a larger, more malleable whole. The question that remains is whether he is a conscious master of this art or an intuitive conductor of forces that not even he fully understands, a crucial distinction when the energy he summons overflows into chaos. The concept of rage is the central pillar of the Travis Scott brand, and the physical manifestation of the rituals he initiates. He doesn't invite his fans to dance. He incites them to rage. This word, laden with connotations of loss of control and violence, is an explicit permission to abandon social norms. By normalizing and glorifying the mosh pit, stage diving, and chaotic energy, he creates a behavioral expectation. Fans arrive at his shows already psychologically primed to participate in a spectacle of controlled disorder, where catharsis is achieved through shared physical aggression. This engineering of chaos is a paradoxical tool of control. By encouraging the loss of individual control, Scott positions himself as the only point of order in the middle of the hurricane, the conductor of the mayhem. His energy on stage, his commands, and his own participation in the rage dictate the crowd's intensity. This creates a dangerous power dynamic where thousands of people in a state of de-individuation and high emotional arousal look to a single figure for guidance. The line between releasing energy and inciting dangerous behavior becomes non-existent. Psychologically, the rage fulfills a need for catharsis in an increasingly ordered and digital world. It offers a release valve for pent-up frustrations and energy, a chance to feel something visceral and real. However, this release comes at a cost. It teaches the brain to associate Scott's music with a state of combat readiness, an us versus them mentality within the concert itself. The danger is that when adrenaline is high and personal identity is low, the capacity for empathy and risk assessment drastically decreases. The glorification of this aesthetic also creates intense peer pressure. In a sea of people raging, standing still or showing concern can be seen as weakness or a lack of belonging. To be a true fan, one must participate in the ritual. This pressure to conform to the group's behavior, even when it becomes dangerous, is a powerful psychological force that can lead people to act against their own self-preservation instincts. They do not want to be excluded from the tribe. Ultimately, the aesthetic of rage is a form of operant conditioning. The audience is rewarded with approval from the artist and the group when they participate in the chaos, reinforcing this behavior with every show. Travis Scott has not just created a musical genre, he has cultivated a behavioral subculture. He has programmed his audience to respond to his stimuli with an explosion of physical energy, turning his concerts into mass psychology experiments where safety becomes secondary to the intensity of the experience. Beyond the music and the chaos, Travis Scott's influence is cemented by a cult of personality meticulously built around his alter ego, La Flame. This name itself evokes images of intensity, passion, and danger, an almost mythological figure. He is not just a rapper. He is a style icon, a curator of cool, a prophet of youth culture. The Cactus Jack brand transcends merchandising. It is a seal of authenticity for his followers, a symbol of belonging to an exclusive and rebellious club. This persona construction is a masterclass in personal brand manipulation. By associating his name with luxury brands and corporate giants like Nike and McDonald's, he executes a brilliant psychological maneuver. He lends his underground and rebellious credibility to these corporations, and in return, they grant him a status of legitimacy and omnipresent power. He becomes a walking paradox, the sponsored rebel, the anti-establishment figure who is the establishment. This confuses the critical judgment of his fans, who see each collaboration not as a business deal, but as further proof of their idols. Cultural power. The relationship he cultivates with his fans is deeply parasocial. He communicates through cryptic posts, surprise releases, and a cohesive visual aesthetic, creating an aura of mystery and exclusivity. Fans feel they are deciphering a code, that they have a special connection and understanding that others lack. This feeling of being in the know is incredibly addictive and strengthens loyalty. He's not just an artist they admire. He's a part of the identity they build for themselves. His control over his image is absolute. Every photo, every video, every piece of clothing is part of a larger narrative. He projects an archetype of the tortured genius and the misunderstood visionary, which makes him immune to much criticism. When he acts controversially, it is not seen as a mistake but as part of his artistic and authentic nature. This narrative armor is a powerful psychological defense, deflecting responsibility and reinforcing the devotion of his most loyal followers, who feel compelled to defend him. The cult of La Flame exploits the fundamental human desire for idols and for meaning. In a secular world, figures like him become miniature gods, offering a belief system, an aesthetic to follow, and a community to belong to. He sells more than music or products, he sells identity. By becoming his followers, Young people feel they are aligning with the forces of the cultural vanguard, led by a flame that promises to guide them through the darkness, without questioning where that flame might actually be leading. The 2021 Astroworld Festival was the moment when all the tools of Travis Scott's dark psychology converged into a mass tragedy. It was not a random accident. It was the inevitable result of a carefully constructed system. The hypnotic, trance-inducing music, the rage aesthetic that normalized chaos, the de-individuation that dissolved personal responsibility, and the worship of the leader as an untouchable shaman created a perfect storm. The crowd was no longer a collection of individuals, but a single entity, a panicking organism responding to primal stimuli. At the height of the chaos, the psychology of the bystander effect manifested on a terrifying scale. In such a vast crowd, and a state of sensory overload, many individuals, even if they perceived the danger, may have assumed someone else would intervene, or that the situation was not as serious as it seemed. Responsibility diffuses in a group. Furthermore, the perceived authority of the artist on stage is absolute. If the shaman continues the ritual, the follower's brain concludes that everything must be under control, ignoring the clear danger. Signals around them in favor of faith in the leader. Travis Scott's failure to stop the show, despite visible pleas from the audience, is a case study in the disconnection that can occur at the peak of a power dynamic. Atop that structure, shrouded in adoration and isolated by performance, it is possible that the reality of the crowd became abstract to him, just a mass of energy to be molded. To the figure at the center of the cult, individuals can cease to exist, becoming mere components of the spectacle. The responsibility of the ritual leader is to protect the tribe, and at that moment, the ritual became more important than the lives that comprised it. The tragedy also exposes the darkest face of catharsis. The quest for a transcendent experience, for a total release, led to a situation where basic survival was compromised. The energy Scott had cultivated for years, the rage, finally spilled over its symbolic boundaries and manifested as a literal, deadly physical force, a surge of human compression. What was sold as a liberation became a trap, proving that when you play with the primal forces of mass psychology, the consequences can be devastating and irreversible. Astroworld serves as a grim warning about the responsibility that accompanies influence. The same psychological techniques used to create an unforgettable concert experience are the ones that contributed to a disaster. The ritual he initiated demanded a sacrifice that no one consented to give. The tragedy forces a critical re-evaluation of the rage culture and the power we surrender to figures who master the art of moving crowds, not just emotionally, but physically, and sometimes with fatal results. If you're finding this analysis insightful, help our channel grow. Like this video, subscribe to the Truth Dark Psychology so you don't miss our future studies, and comment below which other public figure or phenomenon we should dissect next. Behind the image of the authentic rebel in Travis Scott's chaotic energy operates a perfectly lubricated corporate machine. His ability to sell rage is not just an artistic expression. It is a highly marketable product. Giants like McDonald's and Nike don't partner with him in spite of his dangerous image, but because of it. They use the psychology of transference to co-opt his cool and rebellious credibility, selling it to the masses in the form of sneakers and meal deals. It is the domestication and commodification of chaos. This partnership reveals a form of large-scale manipulation. The consumer believes that by buying a Cactus Jack product, they are buying a piece of Travis Scott's rebellion and exclusivity. However, they are participating in a mass consumption cycle planned at the highest corporate levels. Rebellion becomes an item on the menu. Counterculture becomes a limited edition. It's an illusion of subversion that in reality reinforces the very power structures it pretends to challenge. A psychological trick to sell conformity disguised as Individuality. This dynamic exposes the manufactured nature of much of influencer culture. Scott's authenticity, his primary currency, is an asset to be managed and licensed. His ability to initiate mass rituals at his concerts is the proof of concept for brands that he can move consumer behavior. The concert becomes a laboratory, and the fans, unknowingly, are the test group to prove that his influence is real and therefore valuable to advertisers. The visceral energy of the crowd is converted into marketing data. This creates a fundamental cognitive dissonance. How can an artist be simultaneously an icon of anarchic rage and a spokesperson for some of the largest and most structured corporations in the world? The psychology behind this lies in his audience's ability to hold these two contradictory ideas at the same time. Loyalty to the cult of La Flame allows fans to ignore the contradiction, accepting that their idol is so powerful he can operate in both worlds without being corrupted, when in fact, he's the perfect channel through which corporate culture infiltrates the youth. Therefore, Travis Scott's influence is not a purely organic, bottom-up phenomenon. It is a joint effort, a symbiosis between the artist and capital. He provides the raw energy, the tribe, and the credibility, while the corporations provide the platform, the scale, and the legitimization. The result is a psychologically potent cultural product that sells the thrill of danger and rebellion, while keeping the consumer firmly within the system of consumption. It is the most sophisticated form of control, making people believe they are rebelling while they buy exactly what they are sold. After the Astroworld catastrophe, Travis Scott's influence machine shifted gears, moving from ritual creation to mass damage control. His initial public response, his interviews, and his social media posts were a calculated exercise in narrative management. The goal was not just to express remorse, but to redefine his position in the chain of events from an active participant and insider to yet another helpless victim of circumstance. It's a classic tactic of persuasion psychology. Reframe the problem to alter the attribution of blame. The language used in his apologies and interviews is deliberately vague and focused on his own feelings of confusion and devastation. By positioning himself as someone who couldn't understand the severity of the situation, he subtly deflects responsibility from his failure to act. This appeals to the empathy of his loyal fan base, who are psychologically predisposed to defend their idol. For them, it is more comfortable to believe in his powerlessness than to confront the idea that his negligence or the very system he created were directly responsible. This is a case of dissociation on a public scale. To protect his own self-image and that of his brand, the narrative must be that the event was an unpredictable anomaly, not the logical conclusion of the culture he promoted. There is a refusal to connect the rage he sold for years with the surge of human compression that killed people. This denial is a defense mechanism for both the artist and his most fervent followers, as admitting the connection would mean dismantling the entire belief system around La Flame. The long silence followed by carefully planned re-entries into public life is also a psychological strategy. It allows the initial outrage to subside and for new narratives to emerge. Time is used as a tool to desensitize the public to the tragedy. When he finally returns, the focus is no longer on the past event, but on his comeback and his healing, once again centering the story on his own emotional journey instead of that of the victims. It's a masterful control of perception, designed to ensure the brand's long-term survival. Ultimately, the response to the Astroworld tragedy reveals that the same skills used to build a cult of personality can be used to protect it after a catastrophic failure. Narrative control, appealing to emotion over logic, reframing blame, and the strategic use of time are all tools from the dark psychology arsenal. They are designed to manipulate public perception and ensure that, no matter what happens, the ritual leader remains in control of the story, even when the ritual itself has failed so spectacularly and tragically. Asterisk by analyzing the psychology of Travis Scott, we are forced to turn the mirror back on ourselves and our society. His meteoric rise and the intensity of his fan base are not isolated phenomena. They reveal a deep, collective yearning in the modern psyche. The attraction to his mass rituals exposes a fundamental human need for belonging, for transcendence, and for cathartic release in a world that often leaves us feeling isolated, controlled, and emotionally numb. He did not create this need. He simply found it and tapped into it with unprecedented effectiveness. His concerts function as a temporary escape from the tyranny of the individual self. In an age of digital narcissism and constant self-promotion, the chance to dissolve into a crowd, to become part of something larger, louder, and more powerful than oneself, is a seductive offer. Travis Scott sells a form of oblivion, a permission to abandon the anxiety of self-awareness and surrender to a more primal instinct. The question we must ask is not just why he offers this, but why so many of us are so desperate to accept. His popularity reflects a crisis of rituals in our culture. As traditional institutions like organized religion lose their influence, the human need for rites of passage and communal experiences does not disappear. It gets projected onto new arenas. Music festivals, fan culture, online fandoms. Artists like Scott become the new priests, and their concerts, the new cathedrals. The danger lies in the fact that these new rituals often lack the safety structures and accumulated wisdom of the old ones, leaving participants vulnerable to manipulation and physical danger. The Travis Scott phenomenon forces us to confront our own relationship with influence and power. We willingly surrender our agency to charismatic figures, allowing their music to dictate our emotions and their commands to dictate our actions. We feel a vicarious thrill in their rebellion, even if it is a sponsored rebellion. His story is a cautionary tale about the power of parasocial influence and the ease with which admiration can turn into blind worship, where the capacity for critical thought is sacrificed at the altar of the collective experience. In the end, Travis Scott is as much a creation as a creator of our time. He is a master at tapping into the psychological cracks of modern society. To analyze him is not just about judging one man, but about understanding the forces he commands. And more importantly, understanding why we respond to them. The rage in the mosh pit is not just his. It is a reflection of our own need, our own anger, and our own dangerous desire to lose ourselves in the crowd. The power to move the masses is one of the most potent and dangerous forces in the world. Understanding how it works is the first step toward not being controlled by it. If you want to continue unraveling the hidden psychology behind power, culture, and influence, subscribe now to The Truth, Dark Psychology. Turn on notifications to never see the world the same way again. And tell us in the comments, what truth do you want us to expose next?